Making beats can be really easy and really fun, but you just gotta know how to do it and what equipment to use.
You know we gonna make it fresh.
What's going on, everybody? It's your boy Jay Fresh Beats, and today we're gonna be talking about beat making equipment just for the beginners or the intermediates or anybody who is really trying to get into this space of beat making. So let's get into it. All right, first things first, you need to figure out whether you want a Dawless or a Daw Setup. That's going to determine what kind of equipment you buy. So I'm going to first go over the Daw Setup because that's the most common that everybody uses. And then secondly, I'm going to go over the Dawless Setup. There will be chapters down below. If you want to skip ahead to the Dawless, you can. But if not, just stay tuned. So first things first, you're going to need a computer, laptop, whatever it is. That's something you're going to need in order to make beats. I'm not going to go into what kind of specs you need. Most of the D.a.w.s actually show the requirements of what specs you need for your computer. So just use what you have. Now that we have our computer, now we need to figure out our D.a.w. There are 3 D.a.w.s that I recommend. These D.a.w.s are generalized towards beat making. They're not necessarily for recording, mixing, or mastering. They're just for beat making. First things first, Maschine. Maschine is a wonderful D.a.w. just for beat making, and you can record in there if you want to. You can also mix in there as well for mixing your beats. They have a wonderful, simple, user-friendly situation that will definitely help out anybody who is trying to get into the space of beat making. It works out great if you're using one of their flagship controllers or MIDI keyboards. Works out perfectly with that, almost to where you don't even need a mouse. Next, we're going to go to Logic. Logic is Apple's flagship. That is something that people use in any kind of genre, electronic, gospel, hip hop, you name it, Logic has it. And they have some pretty amazing stock plugins, stock instruments that will really turn your production to anything. This not only makes beats, but it also records, it also mixes, and it also masters. The next one I'm going to go into is Studio One. Studio One is another D.a.w. that is similar to Logic, but has its different things. I know Ableton is another one as well, but I've never used Ableton for production, mainly just for playing in church. But Studio One is definitely something that I've heard a lot in the gospel community and for also hip hop as well. Checks off all the boxes the same way that Logic and Maschine does. So if you do want to go for Studio One, that is definitely a good flagship for you. All right, the Maschine Software is actually the cheapest. It's coming in at $50 right now because they're doing the Software of Sounds. Normal price would be $100, but right now it's $50 for the Software of Sounds, where you can get everything 50% off. So definitely go ahead and do that. I'll put the link in the description below. Next is going to be Apple's flagships, Logic. That price is going to be at $200. You can start off free with GarageBand and upgrade later if you really want to get some advanced features, but definitely do upgrade. Logic has just amazing, spectacular stuff. All right, now let's go ahead and go over to Studio One. Studio One is the only somewhat subscription and regular buyout price. If you really want to buy this out, is starting at $399. That is a perpetual license. You pay that one time and you have it for life. I also know that Splice also has a bundle within it where you can rent the program until you buy it all the way out. That's another process that you want to do. Or if you want to just do the month-to-month situation, you can do it for $20 a month. What you're going to need, and this is going to help everyone, you're definitely going to need a MIDI controller. Now you can use, like I said, the Maschine Plus as a MIDI controller, but I did pick up this thing today and it's at Guitar Center right now for $79. This checks off all the marks. This is the MPK Mini by Akai. This actually has a class compliant USB. It does everything that you need for finger drumming, also for inputting keys. It's also got some knobs so that you can control stuff inside, like faders and stuff like that. Really, really good hardware that you can use at your disposal. Another MIDI controller that I do suggest that you do go ahead and cop is the Control M32. Now, anything Native Instruments automatically works with Logic, which is why I suggest it. As soon as you open up Logic, it actually form fits to what Logic needs. That being the Maschine MK3, the Maschine MK3 Micro, and then also the M32, as well as any of the complete control softwares. They just work natively in Logic, and you can control everything in Logic straight from the controller. Another thing that I do recommend is the Novation Launch Key. Any of those work natively with Logic, but they also work with Ableton as well. That's their flagship software. So if you want to go ahead and get that, that is there as well. Next thing you need is a pair of headphones. Now, these are studio monitoring headphones. I know I did say use what you have, but I do recommend that you go get some studio monitoring headphones. These are flat referencing headphones, so it doesn't have any EQ curves or anything like that. It's straight out of the gate, so you can hear your instruments the way they're supposed to be heard. That way, when you do put these in the car or actually at a club, people can hear it the way that you intended it to be heard. One of the studio monitoring headphones that I do recommend is the Sony MDR7506s. These are what I started with. Even in college, they recommended this. Are flat references, and they actually don't require a lot to push out. These are really, really good studio monitoring headphones for recording and beat making, so these are definitely a good one. Another one I've heard is the Audio-Technica AT M50s or even the M30s. Those are good as well. Me personally, I use the 7506s whenever I'm creating beats and whenever I'm recording or anything of that nature. And when I want to start mixing, I definitely use these. These are the DT990s. These actually require a certain amount of ohms. It's basically like putting two speakers beside you. You do need an amp to actually boost those up. So that leads me to my next thing that you are definitely going to need. You're definitely going to need an audio interface. Now, like I said, they're not required, but if you do want to take it to a next level and don't want so much CPU or power coming from your computer and you want to put it in a separate hub, that's what the audio interface is for. It converts analog to digital and digital to analog back again, so that way you can hear it in the best quality possible. Audio interface that I use right now and that I recommend is the Evo 8, 4-channel in, 2-channel out. Checks all the boxes for what I need. Also, another one that I do recommend is the Scarlett Solo. Focusrite is always good when it comes to their interfaces. Sturdy, you can throw it across the room, nothing bad will happen to it. And mind you, this is for starting out, so if you do get something at a higher price, that's perfectly fine. Next, what you're gonna need is some studio monitors. Studio monitors are not your typical computer speakers. No, these have been EQ'd flat just so you can get the best frequency response. Now, the ones that I do recommend are the Yamaha HS5s. Those are some good ones. PreSonus E5s, those are also good as well. Also, the PreSonus Eries 3.5s, those are also good. So that is the Daw setup. Let's go ahead and get into the Dawless setup. Dawless setup is something to where you do not need a computer. I repeat again, you do not need a computer to create the music or do whatever you need to do from there. Let's start off with a recommendation that I use actually on this channel. Let's start off with the Maschine Plus. The Maschine Plus is something that checks all the boxes off for me. It has internal sounds. I can also turn everything that I've done into stems, tracks it out, even arranges it. I can mix, I can master, I can do whatever I want to do with it. I can even record stuff inside of the machine. Not necessarily like a DAW, but still, if I needed to do it, I can do it. And also I can perform with it to to whatever I need to do just from the hardware by itself. There's also the MPC Live 2 that I've heard about. This one actually has an internal battery, so you don't necessarily have to plug it into the wall. Also has speakers as well, so you can do whatever you want to do with it. The RAM is completely different. So the RAM in the MPC Live 2, I think, is at 2 gigabytes. Don't quote me on that. And then the Maschine Plus is at 4 gigabytes of memory, and it doesn't really cap out for the stuff that I need it for. I'm not necessarily making a whole entire gospel production with the Maschine Plus, but just for like making whatever beats I need to make, that is perfect. Now, the next thing you're gonna need for this Dawless setup is cables. Cables that are actually gonna give you some really good sound. They are TRS cables, and it plugs right into the back of your console and then into the speakers. Next, you're going to need the MIDI keyboard or a regular hardware keyboard that just plugs into the back of your hardware. And that is your Dawless setup. It's pretty simple, easy to use, and it actually breaks the monotony. If you're using a DAW all the time, it actually breaks the monotony and opens up some creative ideas. If you really want to see how I use the Dawless setup and making a beat, you can click the video right here and I will check you out in there.